Hey everyone, my name is Beacon. This is the Beacon Breakdown, and today I'm going to be talking about how to modify your UltraPoi Orbs and the UltraKnob Pros. This is going to be a pretty long video, so if you want to skip ahead, you can look at the video description. I have timestamps on there that'll show you the section you might want to go to. In this video, I'm going to show you how to completely disassemble and reassemble your poi, how to put different types of rope and different sizes of ropes in, and show you how to modify your capsules to accept those ropes, how to put extra rope inside your head, which will allow you to pull the excess amount out once your rope is shrunk from normal use. I'll tell you how to put weight in your heads, and then I'll talk about the UltraKnob collaboration with Justin Widmar. These things are really awesome, and at the end of the video, I'll show you how I'm going to put half of this together with one of these to add extra weight and to give it an extra grip. This isn't completed yet, so I'll have that hopefully later. Let's get started on the disassembly. So when you disassemble these, you want to put your fingers on the back right here by the rope on both sides, and then put your palms right here and then squeeze like that, and this should come out. If it's cold from being outside, it's going to be a little harder to do, so you might want to warm it up. Once it gets out, you can just pull and twist like that, and then you can push that back in. Now with the handle, if you have a thinner rope, a lot of times you can just put your fingernails underneath the tabs right here and pull out. But when you have a thicker rope, it's best to kind of twist the rope so it gets tight, and then push in and then pull out like that. These shell halves are held on by these O-rings. There's one on here and two on here. On the handle, I just put my finger on the tabs and then pop it off just like that. On the head, I kind of get my finger between the halves like that, spread that open, take a non-sharp object and go underneath to grab that O-ring off. And if you nick the O-ring with a sharp object, it gives it a chance to split. If that happens, you can go to an auto parts store, and a lot of times they'll have those O-rings behind the counter. I'll then pull that like that. You can take the rope out if you want, and then get underneath that one and take it off the back side. Now, if you take the chip out, you'll notice that this kind of sticks out. This USB port sticks out a little bit. So when you put it back in, you kind of want it to get into that slot right there. You want to put it back in with the LED and the buttons and everything facing down. And then it should click right into that spot. And then everything should go back together the way you took it off. When you put this one back together, make sure that the tabs are aligned. And then when you do this one, I'm not even going to put everything back on because I'm going to take it back off in a second. But what I would do is, once it gets to that tight spot, you're going to want to pull on the rope and push at the same time. And that is that. So the heads, case, and chip weigh around 183 to 185 grams, which is a little on the light side for me. I like around a 200-gram head. So what I figured out how to do is to get some marbles, and you can stick them inside here. One side, it kind of rolls around. The other side, they'll actually snap in place if you get the right size marbles. I get the clear ones just because I don't want you know, the light to get interrupted. If you use like a dark marble and the light's shining straight down, it might affect how it lights up the ball. I don't think I want these two bouncing in together, even though they're really kind of in there solid. I think I'm going to put like a piece of saran wrap or something in between there to kind of add some padding to it. So that helps the weight out quite a bit. I got that up to, you know, 197 grams basically, so that's pretty much perfect for me. Once I get the puck in here, that's probably going to be around 200 grams. So these shells can accept up to around 3/8 inch rope, and it does it pretty easy, but there is some rope that's just a little too thick, even though it says it's 3/8, and it's harder to get the shell to close around it. So there's a couple options for that. Number one is you can find where the shell closes around it, and then wrap a bit of floss around it, and wrap it and wrap it and wrap it, and get it about, I don't know, 1/4 inch wide. That way it will have tightened the rope down enough that it'll fit in there. If that doesn't work, I would recommend using a Dremel over a drill bit to widen it out a little bit. And I use this little drum sander bit, and I'll stick it on there like that, and then kind of work it around. and it opens it up quite nice. I don't recommend a drill bit because it'll chew it up pretty good a bit, and then if you go too far, you get into the next part of the shell, which you don't want to do. Now, I've been able to get up to a 1/2 inch rope inside here, and it's a bit of a, you know, challenge to get that to fit right, but you don't want to drill this out too big, but you can get it enough that it has somewhat of a lip on there, and if you create the right puck on the end, it will fit in there. So before we put the rope into their shells, you need to make sure that you put it through the head or the handle first. If you have a big rope like this is a 1/2 inch rope, and it's going to be a pain to kind of get through there. So with this case of this rope, it has a core and then it's covered by a shell. What I do is I pull that core out a little bit, and then I will take some electric tape and start wrapping on the back side of the fray, go forward, and then once you start taping that core, it's actually been tapered down. So now it should go through the head a lot easier. I'll push and twist when I'm doing it, and then you can get it about that far. Get needle nose pliers down there and then pull it out. Same thing goes for the handle. The handle is actually quite a bit easier to do. Yep. And so now let's talk about the different ropes that we can use. So if your rope is synthetic, a lot of times it can melt, and if you melt it, you can, you know, melt this cap on the end, and that's what's gonna keep it inside the case and not pull out. That's what we're gonna do on these ropes, is put these caps on. There's certain rope that just doesn't melt very well, or certain fibers like cotton that don't melt at all. Certain ropes that have this inner core and the jacket is different type of material, so they melt at different rates. The VPC is a hard one to melt. Some of it just melts way too quick, while the other one takes way too long, so you can't get the inner fibers and the outer fibers to bond very well. This rope right here, which is a climbing rope, it did bond together pretty good, and I created a cap on that. For ropes that don't, you're going to want to put an epoxy plug or something like that on there. I use a couple different varieties, but mostly the DevCon Home 5-minute epoxy, which is this one right here. I get it at Ace Hardware. It's like, I don't know, $6, something like that. And it goes quite a long ways. If you can find it with this applicator tip right here that mixes it as it goes, it's a lot less messy, and it's nice to get into some tight spots with that. But before we get on how to do either the melting or the epoxy, I'm going to show you how to prepare the rope. So first thing I'm going to do is grab some electrical tape and wrap around. And then if it's got a core and a jacket, what I do is I pinch the two together down here, and then I'll push up like that. And what that does is it gets the outer fibers tightened to the inner fibers. And you want to do that once you've done a cap on this end, and you're going to put on a cap on this end as well. Otherwise, you'll have a looser rope than you might want. So once you get that first piece of tape on there, I go right above it and tape again. And the reason I'm taping it is because when there's tape on there, the razor blade goes through it a lot easier, and it doesn't fray out as much. If your rope's too frayed out, you're not going to be able to melt it. You're not going to be able to get epoxy on it too much. So what I'm trying to do is have it only fray out maybe about a 3/8 of an inch or something like that. So I'm going to cut on the top one right here. And this one's for epoxy, so I'll cut it maybe a little over 1/4 inch. And then I'll take that little ring off, and now I have some frayed out fibers that I can apply epoxy to. I'll get to that one in a second. The next one we're going to do is melting. Okay, so these come with a little ring that goes in there like that. It holds on to this pretty good, and so if you melt a cap onto here, this will be on the back side of the cap. A lot of times I don't even use those, but it's not a bad idea to do it. And what I'm going to do here is cut it about that much. I'm going to peel this off, and then I'm going to get my torch or a lighter. I like a torch just because it's a little faster, but you kind of got to do it at a distance. You want to make sure not to melt it too fast. If you melt it too fast, you a lot of times will char it. It'll start to turn black, and that becomes brittle, and you don't want it becoming brittle. So just do it nice and slow. Once you see that all the fibers are kind of melted together, take some kind of a flat object. I use the back of my pliers, and I go like that, and it creates this cap. That one wasn't quite as nice, so I'll just kind of roll it once it cools down a little bit. I recommend doing this with gloves. I get used to the heat, but I know a lot of people it will burn. So then you can take that off, and this should fit inside there. If it doesn't, what you can do is you can heat it up. You don't want to get too close to the fibers here. That's why a lighter is better for this part. But when you heat that up like that, then you can stick it inside here. And if you have the other case, go like that. Give it kind of a twist, and that way it will kind of round it off. And then you can put that there, and that's gonna hold really well. So I want to create a cap on the end of my rope, and I'm going to use an epoxy. I'm going to use this side as a mold, and I'm going to create a cap about that big or however big I want it for this side. If I want to do it on this side, I want it to be a little you know, thinner, because the light shines down on that, and you don't want to completely block the light out. So the way I'm going to do that is use this as a mold, and I want to use some kind of releasing agent. I use chapstick on this, and I'll just like take a Q-tip or something and really rub the inside of this anywhere that there's going to be epoxy with chapstick, and then especially on the edges where the thing closes together like that, just so this won't stick once it hardens up. So something to note is, even if your rope fit in the case really smoothly before, check it now that you got this tape on here, because that extra little bulk could keep it from going in there all the way. And if that's the case, I usually just Dremel it out just a tad bit more. It shouldn't matter as long as you have a puck in there. It should hold it in place. So when I mix this, I want to make sure that there's no bubbles up here, because you want to have equal part mixed. If it's too much of one or the other, it's going to make it sticky. And the same thing goes for when you mix it. You want to make sure that you mix it equally. So put in about that much. Might be a little too much, but it's better to have too much than too little. And then just use a flat stick and mix it really good. And once you've mixed it, kind of scrape off the stick, and then, mix it again. So this stuff has about a 5-minute work time with it. So you got to be kind of quick. And what I do is I make sure I get the back side of the fibers all the way up to the tape coated, and then just roll it in there. You want to make sure the fibers are all super wet, and it's really important to bond the fibers on the outside with the fibers on the inside. So I'll use like a paper clip, and I'll just kind of do this, and that will poke it in deeper so that it bonds with them. So for the final pass here, I get this thing nice and lubed up. Even if you have excess, don't worry about it. You can take care of that in a minute. There is that excess amount on the side there. So I'm going to stick this in here, and then I'm going to let it roll over and make a mess. Now, if your fibers start to stick out the side, kind of give it a twist while you're closing this, and then it should end up like that. I'm going to twist it a little bit more because it's stuck in there. There we go. Now I'm going to pull the rope just ever so slightly down, because I don't want the cap to be quite that big. And then when I get it right where I want it to, I'll take a hose clamp and stick over it, and then tighten that down. And then you're going to want to let it cure facing up, because if it's facing down, then it's just going to run out and not have a nice cap on it. So we'll let this sit for a few minutes, and then I'm going to take it off. Oh, and one other thing I was going to show you, make sure that the rope is facing straight down and not kind of cockeyed, because it'll solidify like that. Also, wear these type of gloves. It's definitely a lifesaver. This stuff is super sticky and does not smell very good at all. Okay, so this should be dry enough by now. If you're not sure if it's dry enough, check your mix tray, and if that old stuff that you mixed up is dry, then that's good. Be careful when you pull this apart. Sometimes it sticks, especially if you don't get enough in one side or in the next. And there you go. Now I do it before it gets completely hard, usually, because I want to be able to come in here and trim any stuff that needs to be trimmed, and it's a lot easier about, I don't know, 10 minutes or so in versus waiting, 30 minutes or whatever. So I'm just going to trim this up and get this nice and flat, and that's pretty much good enough. So yeah, and of course you want to peel your tape off, and hopefully it comes off with the epoxy on there and everything. So there we go. I'm going to show you how to add a little bit of extra rope, so that once your rope shrinks after normal use, you can pull out the excess, and then you have it back to kind of its normal size. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to slide this ring down to wherever I want it, and make sure, if you're going to have it right there, make sure this is either on the top side of that or right here, and not getting stuck right in the middle. So what I'll do is something like that, and then I'm going to use the electrical tape and start wrapping it. Start wrapping it in front of the ring at first, and get it as tight as you possibly can. And I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you build it up a little ways, and then you, at the very last moment, you can kind of go around that ring so that the ring kind of stays in place, and make sure the ring is straight like that. And then put it in there like that. So when you're done, you can, when it's done shrinking, then you can pull it out. Or if you want to put it to this point right there, sometimes if you make the cap big enough, this little ring will hold it from sliding back down. But it's got a different shape right here than it does, I think, right here. So I recommend doing it this way, so this holds it. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to be putting extra weight in here, that this is going to take up for that. So if I wanted to put an extra marble in there for weight, I'll just do it like that. So UltraPoi and Justin Widmar got together and got their UltraKnob Pro casings to fit inside of his 3D printed knobs. These are the Widmar XL knobs. They're slightly different. This one has a bigger base than this one. This one's a little bit more tapered. I think this is considered the XL still. It's, as I said, a 3D printed knob, so the light disperses through it super amazingly. I can't believe how bright these things are. What's also amazing is how light they are. At 19 grams, I think they're probably the lightest knob on the market. So if you like light, this is the way to go. I have been using really heavy handles, and I'm going to upgrade my old handles to this style. And so the rest of this video is about making heavier knobs. It might not work good for you, so this might be boring. But what I did on my old knobs was I used a Widmar XL knob, and then I had a Night Ice chip inside here that just ran off a non-rechargeable battery. That's why I'm upgrading. I don't like the way that these things feel. They're just a little too slippery to me, because I have generally dry hands from being a mechanic. So I decided to get a silicone tape and wrap all around it, and then I used a palm grip that I cut in half and put it on the front side. That gave me the extra weight and the right grip that I like. So what I decided to do on my new setup is I got my old UltraPoi knobs, and if you can see inside there's this little ledge. So if you take your razor blade in, come in through the side, and get flush with that ledge and go all the way around, you can cut it in half perfectly like that. So the next thing I needed to do was to make the hole bigger. So as you can see right there, on the older, thicker knobs, the hole is smaller than what I need. It'll fit on this size rope, which is 3/8, but the rope also kind of swells up to, like, I think about 7/16 after using it a while. And since you have to pull the case out this way and pull the rope through the knob, this is on there so dang tight that it would be a pain in the butt to keep pulling that on and off. And if I did it too much, it would start to split, which I was noticing right here. This looks weird because it's got that glow in the dark stuff, but I've got that slit right there. So I wanted to make the hole bigger. Now, if you try to drill this out, you're going to get all sorts of nicked edges, and it probably won't work at all. And any nicked edge has the risk of splitting pretty easily. So I wanted to make this perfectly round. And what I decided to do was I got a 45 caliber bullet. This is called a 4570 shell. And then I sharpened the edge on a grinder. I just spun it like that. It didn't take much at all. And it got it nice and sharp. And so you can either use just the shell and push through, put it on a flat surface, put a block on the back of it, and then push through. But I wanted to go the extra step of getting it perfectly centered. So I took some PEX piping, which is what they use in certain houses for water, and I slid that over this part, and then the PEX went inside of this 16mm 1/2" drive socket. And the reason I went with 16mm is because this right here is the same size. So what I did is I stuck this in there. I had the bullet actually flush, and then bottom this out inside of here, and then I pressed this down. I actually used a little hand press, and it worked really, really well. And as you can see, that is perfectly round, no nicks at all. So now I'm going to put that on the inside of my handle here, and this thing should slide a lot easier. What's cool about this, the old knobs have a bigger spot right here that you can put washers in. I think I could probably get up to about 4 washers in there, which would add up to probably around 20 grams of weight if I really wanted it, which is going to be great for like gunslingers and stuff when I decide to finally get into that. So once I get it on there, as you can see, there's a little bit of an overhang right there, but that's going to be okay because I'm going to use the wrap to wrap this up, and it's going to build itself up, so it'll be a perfectly smooth transition. Now, I'm not too sure how many washers I'm going to use, if I'm going to use any at all, so I'm going to put this all together first, and then if I need to put washers in there, I have washers that are cut in half, so I can put like 2 washers on both sides, or a washer half on both sides, and then put it together. Now, if they're bouncing around in there too much, you can get some like clear vinyl tubing from like Ace Hardware or whatever, and you can cut it to this a height just 1 minus the washer height of the overall depth, if that makes sense, and then stick this in there so it should be flush on top of this, holding that washer down. So anyways, that's probably not going to get done on this video in time for me to publish it. I'll put a picture out of what the overall thing looks like. So I hope this has helped some people out. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. Please like and subscribe if you can. And thanks a lot for watching. Have a good one.